Hello, everybody. I am here interviewing the American Society for Engineering Education's Lifetime Achievement Award winner for 2021, Dr. Karen L. Watson. Virtual round of applause. And my name is Amman Asfaw, and I'm here to have a very candid and open interview and discussion with my now new friend, Karen, who, by the way, we have never met before. So we are essentially strangers, but we're both engineers, both interested in engineering education. And so hopefully this will be a fruitful discussion. First of all, how are you, Karen?
I'm
And,
doing great. How are
and
you?
I'm great. And congratulations again on your achievement.
Thank you very much. And congratulations. I found out you just graduated and started your new job. I just found out that when we were exchanging emails. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So my first question to you, we'll start with the easy one, is how did you first get into engineering education and when?
So I think when I was working on my PhD, I was on a research assistantship, and the last semester, they asked me if I would be willing to teach. And I did, and I loved it. I taught a senior elective class, and I absolutely thought it was a great experience. So I had, between my bachelor's and going back to graduate school, I had worked in industry, and I assumed I would go back to work in industry when I finished my graduate work. But after that experience, I decided, okay, it'll be safer because of the pay scale to go into education first. And then if I don't like it, it'll be easier to step into industry. And so I started teaching, and I have been teaching now for 39 years. So I'm loving it.
That is amazing. That's awesome. So what comes to mind, so I did get a chance to teach a laboratory class while I was a graduate student. It was my first time teaching. So I had some experiences, some learning curves, being a first time teacher. So I'm curious, do you have, that beginner or rookie teacher story that and maybe every engineering educator has where you just messed up, where you dropped the ball and it's just because you didn't have the experience that you look back on now and maybe laugh?
Well, yeah, I will tell you, I have several. So I'm trying to think of one that would be good. One was I told my students that we will have the quizzes only on the Mondays after the team lost. And my school said, oh, we have a bad football team this year. Couldn't we please do it only after we win? And so it's just getting to know what the students were going to push you on. But one of my experience was, I was about their age when I started teaching, and you are too. And so they push you a lot, but they also trust you more. But the mistake you make, and I think we've all made, is we assume that what motivated me is going to motivate everybody else. Mm. And it just doesn't. And so you think you're encouraging people, and they're just not at all encouraged sometimes by what you thought would get them excited. So I've had lots of experiences where you finally figure out it's not about what you enjoy, it's about what motivates them, what they enjoy. And the them is not one person. Right. We have many one-on-ones at the same time. So every student is motivated differently. And so your job is to create an environment so they can all find their motivation, not to find some magic technique that's right for them. And by the way, that's my dog barking at you now because she wants to be part of the interview too,
Okay, that's really interesting because that makes me think of the challenge that comes with being an engineering educator. So with your expertise and everything you've gone through so far in engineering education, how do you try to form or make a classroom or curriculum that is catered to everyone despite everyone having different motivations? Because it's nearly impossible, but what do you do to try to I guess diversify the motivations that you provide for the students?
Well, I don't think it's that much different than what people have to do in industry. When you are working with a team of people, you can't assume they're all motivated to do the same thing in the same way. And so what we learn working with teams is what we learn about working with classes, is that the more you get them excited about working together, the less you have to do. The more you make it all about you and that they have to follow your every instruction and this, that, the harder it is. The more you can turn them loose on helping each other, on teaching each other, because you never learn it better than when you have to teach it. So when they're teaching each other, the teacher is learning from them. And so what I've learned is that if you make it about them helping each other to learn, and me just being there to guide them in the general direction, the right way and stuff like that, they will teach each other way more than I could ever teach them. And so I think it's very important to create that safe environment so they don't abuse each other or don't teach the wrong things or anything like that, but creating that environment, and then let the students elevate each other, and they'll do a great job of that.
Now that is some wisdom right there. I love that. Okay, that's really good to know. And so now this makes me think of, and I try to think of things, from the challenges that we face, right, and how we try to overcome them to make our classrooms better, to make society better, make ourselves better, all that. And so the next challenge that I think of that comes to my head is, just as you maybe have perfected that environment in the classroom, right, and trying to create an environment where students can teach each other and thus themselves. What happens when we go all virtual and then it goes to COVID? So I know it's been, I'm sure, written about, and maybe a topic people are tired of hearing, but how did you adjust to teaching virtually and trying to keep that same wisdom intact that you just shared?
The hardest part for me, because I'd already moved to a mode where I flipped the class, where I didn't go to class and lecture to them, where I assigned them. I mean, there's all kinds of videos and YouTubes. And as a matter of fact, every semester, one of my assignments is for students to make videos to teach the next semester. So so I have those videos available for them. So whatever I'm teaching, there's a number of videos they can find that I've found for them on YouTube or on the internet. And then there's a number of videos that students from the previous semester has made for them that explains what they now have learned that they are getting out of the class, and stuff like that. And so I wasn't lecturing to them anyway. They were watching that part on video. The hard part about going virtual was what I was doing was having them work with each other in small groups to solve problems. And I was monitoring, I was watching, and I was able to see if they seemed stuck or had questions. So the harder part for me was figuring out how to best set up those groups and how they could interact comfortably with each other. Because you and I both know it's easier to interact with video with somebody you know than somebody you don't really know. And so the fortunate thing for us when it first hit us in 2020 is we were halfway through the semester. So they'd already been in a class participating. It's harder when you start in the semester where they don't know each other at all. But you can still do it. And so the tools we have, it would have been horrendous 20 years ago. But the tools we have now that let you set up breakout rooms and let them go into groups and come back and raise their hand and all kinds of stuff allowed them to have a lot of those interactions. And we actually did a study, and we found that the professors in engineering thought the transition went better than the students did. And the reason that we further studied this and found was that the professors who were primarily lecturing thought, whew, I delivered my lecture, all the machinery came on, I feel like it went fine. But the students were getting even less out of it because they didn't have their peers to read their body language, to talk to, and stuff like that. So the traditional way of teaching was actually having more problems with this online variety than those of us who had already transitioned to say, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of my time lecturing to you. I'm going to let you explore that outside and then come to class prepared. And if you, and by the way, if they come and you do that right, then they don't have to study for any sort of test you have.
Very true. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. That I think making students make YouTube videos or videos to teach the next semester, I think that's actually very smart and very genius. So I wish I would have knew these things before. But and if you can't tell, I'm kind of asking questions as an engineering educator or an aspiring engineering educator, right? One that is considering that path in the future. So,
but even if you don't take that path, even if you become a team leader or a supervisor or a manager, some of those same things you use to motivate teams, to inspire your colleagues, to learn from your colleagues. I mean, it's not always about delivering to them. Sometimes they need to deliver to you. You're going to be able to use it whichever path you take.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And I have a little bit of experience compared to you in engineering education research. So I've kind of dipped my toes in the topic. And now that I'm in industry and which is the other pathway, right, at the moment, I like you're bringing that up. I am seeing the benefits of knowing about engineering education and how to work with people and teams, because it could actually help with your projects and meeting deadlines and ultimately being successful. So so that brings me to the next question I want to ask, and I want to figure out how to word it. But so what about the engineers that maybe don't see the value of engineering education, right? Maybe I'm sure maybe you've met some people like where they're just so focused on, you know, the pure math or the physics and the fundamentals of the curriculum, that sometimes they might not see these aspects of engineering education that play a part. So could you maybe speak on that? Because I feel like I personally see that in engineering quite a bit. And what can we do to, like, you know, help improve that situation and make people more aware, I guess, of engineering education?
So I'm gonna answer that a little more broadly and then come to engineering education, because a lot of engineering faculty don't recognize the value of teaching students and having them practice and hone their professional skills, their skills on how to team, how to communicate, how to work with others, stuff like that, which we recognize as important, but a lot of professors don't often recognize how important it is that they create an environment so that students are practicing those. Or we act like, oh, they're going to do that in the capstone, so I don't have to do it in my theory class. When the truth is, if we think they need this many semesters to practice a theory, they need that many semesters to practice the professional skills. And so what we're trying to get everybody to understand is, if you want people to be good at something, then they practice it regularly. I tell my students, with the football team, I'm from Texas, so football is always the example we can use. The football team has decided not to practice. They're just going to go on the game day and play. How do you think they're going to do? And the students say, well, that's absurd. Well, that's it. They may know the play cognitively, but they need to practice it and practice together to get it good. And engineers need to do that too. So the first step in your question is, we have to get more professors to understand that practicing not how to be a better student, but how to be a better professional in their freshman, sophomore, junior, senior class, not just the senior class, is very important. And then we get into, it's harder to teach the professional skills in many ways, or harder to evaluate how they're doing in the professional skills than it is sometimes to evaluate whether they can do the theory or not. And so we're taking professors who now recognize, yes, okay, they need to practice those professional skills, we're taking them to the point that now we need to be able to evaluate those professional skills. And that's different. And you get right into many of the questions that engineering educators ask, the kind of techniques you have to use to evaluate those professional skills, or many of the same techniques you're going to use to evaluate whether your education technique is effective or not. And so we have them there. They recognize it's not easy. They respect that there are good ways and bad ways to do it, just like in any laboratory research and stuff like that. And they come to grow, even if they don't want to do that kind of research themselves, the respect that it is an actual field, it is actual expertise in knowing which yardsticks to use and which ones not to use in this particular case. And I respect the turbo machinery guys. I don't know how to evaluate turbo machinery. They come to respect, if they'll stick with us long enough and we're calm enough as we talk to them, that the skills to measure whether our techniques in education are effective or not are actual scientific skills that we can teach as well.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And that's very well said. So as a follow-up question, then, so you kind of touched on how to have engineering students and those who are matriculating through to realize this. So at the faculty level, and this is something I'm personally curious about as a student, because I always saw, like, you know, the faculty in my departments and at my school, and they all seem to be kind of like in the same departments, but sometimes like they would do their own thing or work on their own, right? And so my question to you is, how how have you as an engineering educator been able to better the engineering educators around you while respecting, you know, their expertises and their, you know, swim lanes, if you want to call it, because, you know, they are doing their jobs and they have a way. So I'm curious about that, and what is that like, and what have you learned in your time so far?
So I tell you a little background for me. So my first job with my bachelor's was with AT&T Long Lines. That doesn't even exist anymore, but they put me in management development. So as a fresh BS in electrical engineering, I got to have a lot of management development classes. And then my second job was with a small consulting firm where the thing you just described about faculty is what these consultants, how they operated together. We called on each other's expertise, but we each had our own assignments that we covered. And you wanted to be fairly independent and unique in how you did it, but you wanted to have the expertise available when you needed it. So I was fortunate from those experiences that when I came into a faculty position, I had a different mindset. And I saw the fact, a whole bunch of us who had different expertise, but we overlapped and we could help each other. My first experience at school teaching here at Texas A&M was one faculty member came up and said, here are my notes from the class you're about to teach, and I'm going to share these with you. One of my first experiences in that year was another senior professor came up and said, here are two proposals. One got funded, one didn't. I want you to look at both of them. And I asked him, I said, which one got funded? And he said, read them and you come back and tell me. And I read them and said, they're both great. And he said, that's the point. You can have a great proposal and it still may not get funded. You've got to try, you know. And so I had professors who were sharing with me. So that set the mode for me that that's how you're supposed to behave. And I hope that we get more and more aligned with that, because I think for a variety of reasons at many schools, we've been asking the professor, and especially during this pandemic, to operate even more isolated from each other. And so I think it's important that now that we have had that to an extreme, let's not just come back and practice like we're isolated that way when we can get back together. Let's behave a little bit different in how we share and communicate things. I'm hoping for that mindset to be a little stronger.
So I'll end it with this. I have one more question, and then I'll open it up to you if there's any final words that you'd like to put in. But my last question is, how have you, as now you're saying 39 years as an engineering educator, is that correct? So how have you kept the motivation, the drive, the desire to keep up the pace that you're at? Because I'll be honest, I've seen a lot of professors and heard about a lot of professors in engineering where they've been around a long time and they get comfortable, right? And complacent. And then the quality of teaching goes down, right? And I'm being real here. But you here obviously are being recognized with a Lifetime Achievement Award. And I can just tell in the way that you're speaking that you are still engaged in this as if this was your first couple of years, as an engineering educator. So that's my question to you is like, what has been the secret sauce for you? Why, how have you been still engaged and motivated even after almost 4 decades?
So I cheated. Okay, so I cheated because I spent a good part of that time in administration. So
Okay.
I've been an associate dean, I've been a dean, I've been a provost. And so I spent a lot of time in that part of the world. And I will tell you a lot of the things, because I kept referring to you that even when you're in a team or a managerial position, you're going to be using these same skills. I found that when I was in administration. So some professors get tired because unlike industry, I can't say, oh, you're bored with electrical engineering, I'm going to send you to the chemistry department for now. So they spend 40 years in the same department teaching the same kind of courses. I was fortunate that I got to traverse over many areas. So I'm a recovering administrator. I've been back for 4 years and I love it, being back in the classroom and teaching. But, I think that what people have to manage, whether you're in industry or in academia, is that feeling of being stuck or bored. And so you have to, sometimes you're given the opportunity with promotions and new assignments to learn new things. Sometimes you have to make that opportunity for yourself. And so I'm very sympathetic to faculty who have been to help them to refine that excitement and enthusiasm, because I can tell you as a recovering administrator, it is great fun to teach.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you for that. And then my last question, or it's an optional question, or you can just say anything that you want to let everyone know at this moment. But if you don't have anything, I'm curious, what are your plans for the next couple decades of engineering education, if you choose to be in it?
So I think we haven't taken care of the social justice issues that need to be addressed by engineering when we are teaching engineering. And we haven't taken care of it because we're not very good at it ourselves. Systemic bias in how we select, how now and then, not all the time, like an engineer. And so I think we have to think a lot about how we are doing that. And our society is telling us, you can't espouse we're for diversity. And we've been working on it for half a century and we're still lousy at it. There's some underlying assumption that's not working right. If we, after 50 years or 100 years, but after 50 years, we can't fix it better than we fixed, then we have to look at this black box and say, some reason it's still not getting the outputs we want. We need a redesign. We need to do something different than we've been doing. We can't just say it's their fault they're not here. We have to change what's happening in the box. And so I hope to keep, I don't have all the answers. I think it's a complicated problem. I think we have to figure out how to handle this complex system and still get the quality engineers we want. but we can do a better job than we've been doing. And so I hope to be helping people think about that and questioning that, and maybe now and then helping us move that box a little bit differently.
Awesome. I couldn't agree with you anymore. So thank you so much, Karen. Once again, congrats on winning the Lifetime Achievement Award for 2021 from the American Society for Engineering Education. In this short time that I've talked with you, I've definitely learned a lot. I imagine a lot of your students and peers and colleagues have also learned a lot in your time in engineering education. So a big kudos to you. Thank you. And with that, we'll end this interview. Everyone have a great rest of your day or night, and hope to see you next year at the 2022 conference.
Thank you, Amman. Bye-bye.